This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, any questions, guys, before we get started? So, yesterday and day before, we were looking into automation. We were understanding how to, let's say, create containers and so on and so forth. And before that, in the theoretical classes, we were looking at virtual machines. So we were telling how to create a virtual machine. And before you create a virtual machine, I was telling you need a network, and this network is going to give you some kind of an isolation. It's your own private network out here in a public cloud, and inside which you have something called as a subnet, and this subnet attaches itself to something called as a network interface card, and then network interface card goes ahead and, let's say, attaches itself to the virtual machine, and virtual machine has its own disks like the data disk and also the OS disk out here. And then we had something called as a network security group rule, which is telling what is the inbound and the outbound port rules. And then we had a public IP address, and all these three components, which is the subnet, the NSG, and the public IP address, is getting attached to the NIC card out here as such. So we are applying all these things to the NIC card, and the subnet is internally attached to the virtual network out here as such. And then after doing or after creating this setup, we went ahead from our local machine. We did something called as an RDP using the public IP address. So we created something called as an RDP session. And once we created the RDP session, we went inside this machine. And now the intention was that in order to convert this machine into a web application server or an application server out here, this is what we wanted to do. So what did we install? Going inside this machine, what exactly did we install the other day? We installed
IIS.
something. IIS, exactly. Installed something called as IIS. How did we install? We went into server manager. We said add roles and features. And once add roles and features, we went into a role called web server in bracket IIS, Internet Information Service. And as and when we installed that, in our C drive, we got a folder called inetpub. Inside that particular folder, we went ahead, put some HTML code, and we were able to, let's say, use that particular public IP address, and we were able to load our website. We'll again do that, not a problem. We'll again do that, but just give me a second. I'll just switch my speakers to TV speakers out here. Okay, great. All right. So we did that. So this is what we have right now. Is that I have a virtual machine, and on top of this particular virtual machine, I put some HTML code, some simple HTML code out here. So in place of this particular HTML code, you can have a .NET, you can have Java, you can have multiple or different kinds of code that you can actually go ahead and deploy out here as such. So I have a very simple code called as a HTML code that I deployed. And here what is happening is that as a user, I'm giving you some IP address called some 20.x.x.x, some IP address out here. You as a user, if you are hitting this particular IP address, this IP address is internally going ahead talking to that particular virtual machine. It's requesting that virtual machine that it's telling, hey virtual machine, can you go ahead check what is the content inside that particular folder called inetpub, inside which you have something called www root. Inside this folder, please give whatever the content you have. Here you have a HTML content. So this application or this virtual machine is now sending across the request or sending across the HTML page back to, let's say, the user. And as a user, what you're doing is that you're able to see a complete website. You're able to interact with that website. You're able to, let's say, do your regular activity. I mean, you're, let's say, going and you can log into that website and so on and so forth. That complexity depends upon the code. Like how complex is your website or how simple is your website? It depends upon the code out here as such. Now, as an administrator, our job or our duty as a DevOps engineer is to create the infrastructure, secure the infrastructure using multiple energy rules and etc. And maintenance of the infrastructure. For example, let's say there is something called as a patching activity to maintain the operating system regularly, to update the softwares regularly. All these things is something that we take care of. Deployment of the code, right? If you are a DevOps team will take care of the deployment of the code. Or if you do not have a DevOps team, the development team will take care of this one. So writing and deploying the code is the responsibility of a development team. Or if you have a DevOps team, development team will write the code and give it to the DevOps team. DevOps team will go ahead and let's say deploy the code out here as such. So as a DevOps engineer, all these now come into your area apart from development. You don't have to really develop, you don't have to really write the code out here as such out there as such. Now, let's imagine one thing. See, when I'm saying I have a HTML code here, all this is working fine. So all this is like good working fine and all that stuff. Just think about this particular scenario. See, this virtual machine is nothing but a simple software that is running on top of a physical server. So you have an actual physical server that is situated in a data center. So you have a data center out here, and this particular data center is constructed or it's located as a part of East US2 region, because that's where I created my virtual machine. So Microsoft will simply say that, okay, fine, let me go ahead into that particular data center, identify a server, identify one physical server that is available. Meaning, let's see which server is empty. Let's look at that particular server, and it is provisioning this particular software called virtual machine on top of this particular server out here as such, which is running in ECUS2. Good enough. So as a user, I'm requesting for this particular data, or I'm requesting this particular website called 20.x.x.x, something like this. It's going to the virtual machine, and as soon as it's going to the virtual machine is going to the server, getting the data that is there in the server, sending across to your browser, and then as a user, you're able to, let's say, use your browser in order to interact with this particular website out here as such. Now, the question here becomes is that when I'm looking things from an architectural perspective, let's say I'm an Azure architect working in an organization, and all of the setup, right, it is established or it's created by you as a DevOps engineer. Architecture is reviewing this one. The Azure architect is reviewing this, and the architecture is asking you one simple question: is that, you know what? What if something happens to this particular server? See, this is a physical server. You cannot rule out the possibility of wear and tear. You cannot rule out this possibility of wear and tear out here. Also, when I say it's a physical server, it has some kind of a power supply. It has some kind of a power supply. It's connected to a power source. What if there is a fluctuation in this power source? Or because of some issue, the power source is not working there. Also, this is a physical server, and you know what happens in a physical server is that it really gets heated up. When your machine is running, even when your computer is running, if you touch the bottom of your computer, it will be very hot after you use it for a longer time. Physical servers are also the same thing. That's the reason you have proper ventilation, proper air conditioning, and all these things in order to cool them out. Sometimes what happens is that air conditioning might fail. The physical server might be really becoming very hot and etc. In those cases, right, the server might not be available. I'm telling the server might not be available out here. If the server is not available, this is nothing but a simple piece of the software running on top of the server. Even this will not be available. If this is not available, as a user, if I go into this particular website and try to, let's say, log into that particular website, I'll simply get an error message telling that, okay, fine, error 500, server not available, or 404, 403, some kind of an error telling that the server is not available out here as such. Now, let's imagine that this particular service is for a website called irctc.co.in. The service is for something called irctc.co.in out here. And let's say that it is a Tatkal period. A lot of users are going to the website trying to book their tickets. Very simple, the website is not available. So imagine how much of loss it is going to, let's say, give for the government of India in that 2 hours window. Because I'm talking about crores and crores of users across the country, outside the country, everyone trying to get the same website. Server is not available. Sometimes the load on the server is not able to take the load. A lot of factors out here which will fail, and that's the question what my architecture is asking is that in these scenarios, what are you really going to do? How are you really going to manage your application out here as such? What he's simply
Okay.
asking is, I'll get there. What he's simply asking is that how do you ensure that the application is highly available and durability? One simple question is that how are you going to ensure that this particular application is really available out here? What is the, let's say, or what kind of steps are we taking to make sure that there is high availability and also durability? And that is where I'm getting into in configuring availability and durability of my application using multiple concepts out here. So over the next couple of classes, we'll understand this architecture. We'll try to see how can I make my applications more available, how can I make my applications more durable by using something like virtual machines and associated components with virtual machines out here as such. This is what we are going to look into. And when you create a virtual machine, right? So when I say, let's say, create a virtual machine out here, the portal visit, it's going to ask you a couple of things. Firstly, it's asking you for the subscription. Secondly, the resource group. So I'll say this is a demo RG, something like this, some resource group out here, and I'll say okay. And here it's asking you for the machine details, nothing but the name of the machine. So I'll say demo VM01. I'll just create a machine called demo VM01 or 00, something like this. I'll start with 00 beta. Asking you for the region. So it's telling in which data center of the world that you want to create this machine in. I'll say something like ECS2. I'll take this data center out here. I'll just scroll down, and there is one very important thing called as availability options out here as such. Here I have three different options called availability zone, availability set, and something called as virtual machine scale set out here as such. I will firstly go for something called availability set, which is the smallest option that is available, very powerful, but though powerful, though smallest, very powerful option that is available out here. It is saying, okay, fine, great, you have selected an availability set. Now, can you tell me where is your availability set? Availability set here becomes an actual resource in Azure. Availability set now becomes an actual resource in Azure, which means that if you go ahead and try to look for something called as an availability set. So I'll just duplicate this tab and I'll just come here into, let's say, my search window. And if I look for something called availability sets, I have something called as an availability set out here that I can create. So either you can hit the create button here or you can go ahead and come here. It's asking you for the availability set. It's saying no available items. You can say create new. You can also click create new button out here as such. Now, as in when I hit the create new button, it's first asking me what is the name of your availability set. I'll say something like AV set sample 1, something like this. And very importantly, it's now asking me what is the fault domain, what is the update domain. It's asking me, okay, fine, you know what, if you want me to create an availability set, please give me something called as a fault domain and the update domain out here as such. What I'll do is, for the demonstration, I'll just go ahead and put my fault domains at 2, update domains at 2. I'll say okay. So I'm just doing this for a demonstration. So what I did is that I said, what is the name of the availability set? Then I said, okay, fine, the fault domains and the update domain combination. I said 2 fault domains, 2 update domains. This is what I put in. Now, what is going to happen in the background is this. When you are talking about something called as an availability set, and when you are telling a combination of 2 cross 2, meaning 4 different servers, Microsoft is saying, okay, fine, you know what? In a data center of Azure, let me group 4 different servers. Let me select 4 different servers. This selection is based completely upon a backend algorithm. So it'll tell, okay, fine, you know what? Let me take 4 different servers out here. Because there can be thousands of servers that are running out of a data center. So Azure is going to tell, okay, fine, you know what? Let me take 4 different servers called, let's call them as server 0, server 1, 2, and 3, and 4, or server 1, 2, 3, server 2, and server 3. So there are 4 servers that we are talking about in this particular availability set. So we said 2 cross 2, there are about 4 servers right now. And Microsoft is now telling, okay, fine, you know what? If you're selecting 4 servers, I'll select this 4 servers in this particular combination. Firstly, I'll divide the servers horizontally, and I'll tell that server 0 and server 1 belong to one particular fault domain called fault domain F0. We call them as F0 for naming convention. Then it tells server server 2 and server 3 belong to another fault domain called F1, fault domain 1 out here. Now, servers belonging to the same fault domain, let's say F0, which is nothing but 0 and 1, these two servers are attached to a common power source called P0, meaning they will have a common power source. They will have a common router switch, meaning when these servers want to communicate with each other, you need physical routers. So it says, okay, fine, these servers need physical routers, common power source out here. And the fault domain 1, which is 2 and 3, server 2 and server 3, they will be attached to a power source one called power source 1. You have a you have a router switch R0, you have a router switch R1. So there is a physical separation in a data center level telling that, okay, fine, you know what? This is fault domain 0, this is fault domain 1 out here as such. Now, if something happens to this particular power source called P0, it's not available, which means server 0 and server 1 will not be available, but server 2 and server 3 will be available. The concept of availability set here is that no matter what happens, at least one server in your combination will be available. That's what Microsoft is telling, and that's what they're telling by using the terminology called fault domain. When they say fault domain out here, see, when you look at the meaning of fault, now fault is a term that is used in geography. When you look at fault, it's nothing but a crack. It's a physical crack out here. So now it's telling whatever things that can happen physically will be addressed by your fault domain out here as such. What Microsoft is also going to do is that they are going to do this vertical division out here. Sorry, they're going to do the vertical division out here. So one horizontal, one vertical. They're now telling server belonging to the same vertical plane, which is 0 2 are called as update domain 0, U0. Server belonging to this one, which is 1 and 3, they belong to an update domain called U1 out here. Now Microsoft is telling that in an update domain, the reason you have an update domain is because, see, even these servers have some softwares running on them. They have something called hypervisor. They have something called multiple softwares like, antivirus software, firewall softwares, and all these things running on this particular service. On a regular basis, Microsoft also needs to update these particular softwares. So what Microsoft will do is that Microsoft will first take the update domain 0 and update both these servers parallelly. Telling that, okay, fine, I'll update these particular softwares, and during that update, your servers won't be available. Your servers will not be available because the servers are going to go down. But servers belonging to the update domain 1, they will be available. Microsoft at one time or at one point in time will only update one particular update domain. In my case, something called U0 out here as such. And Microsoft is now telling, okay, fine, you know what? I will only go ahead and update this particular update domain called U0. I won't touch U1. Let's say in the same time you have a power failure in P0. So what is now happening? 0 and 2 are not available because update is going around. At the same time, 0 and 1 are not available because you have a fault failure. But you have 3 available. Microsoft is now telling at least one server should be available in any point in time. Any point in case, at least one server is available, and Microsoft also gives you a freedom to go ahead and select the combination. It's telling the maximum fault domains that I can provide are 3. Maximum update domains that I can provide are 20, which means a combination of 60 different servers. You can think about a combination or a statistics or a probability and a combination of, let's say, 60 different servers out here, meaning Microsoft can now arrange, let's say, a software or your application on 60 different combinations of servers out here as such. That's what the documentation also tells you. So if you click on the documentation, it's telling availability option, availability zones, availability sets, and virtual machine scale sets out here. So it's telling an availability set is nothing but a logical grouping of the virtual machines to understand your application is provided. We recommend to, let's say, that 2 or more virtual machines are created within the availability set to make sure you reach an SLA of what? 99.99, sorry, 99.95 for an availability set. And if you go here into the availability set, this is what it's telling you. It's telling what is an availability set, how does it work. That's what it tells you. It has an update domain and a fault domain. And if you just scroll down, this is what it tells you. That this is how update domains and this is how fault domains are actually configured within your infrastructure. And now what I'll do is I'll just come here. I'll say, okay, fine. To begin with, I'll say 2 cross 2 because I'm doing a very simple demonstration out here. So 2 cross 2 combination is good enough for me. I'll say okay. And the remaining options remain the same. The rest of the options, I'll just go for Windows 2019 data center. I'll just scroll down. It's asking me for the size. I'll take a 2 virtual core CPU, 8 GB RAM combination today. I'll say this is some test user. I'll give some password here. Just scroll down. I'll allow the ports called HTTP, HTTPS, and RDP. 3 different ports out here for internet and also the RDP connections out here as such. I'll say next. And today I'll just go with an OS disk. I'm not adding a disk out here like like the way I did yesterday or the before classes. I don't need a data disk out here. I'm good with an OS disk. If required, I can also later come and add, let's say, attach a data disk. That's not a problem. I'll say next networking, and I can also create a virtual network from this page only. I can go ahead and, let's say, create a virtual network. So if you see this, it went ahead and it created its own virtual network out here. It's telling, okay, fine, you don't have to really create one. I'll create one if you do not have. So I'll say, okay, fine, this is good enough. And I'll attach a public IP address to this particular virtual machine. I'll say public IP address. Let's go down. It's saying management. I'm not doing anything in the management out here right now. Monitoring, will do a separate session on what monitoring really is. Monitoring and alerting, will do it in a separate session out here. I'll say review and create. So I'm mostly touching the basics, the disks and the networking. The rest of the things I'm not really, say, concerned about at this point. and I'll now go ahead, and now I am creating in this entire architecture. I will get all these components for sure, the virtual network, the subnet, the NSGs, and all these things. Apart from this, I am also now creating one more additional resource called as an availability set with a 2 cross 2 combination, and I am deploying this machine into the availability set out here. This is me telling Microsoft that, you know what, I need a high application durability. So that's the reason I'm going ahead and deploying this particular machine inside this particular availability set out here. Such. This is what I'm telling Microsoft, and that's the concept of availability sets out here. Such. And this is the documentation that tells you what an availability set is, what a fault domain is, and what an update domain is. And this is a session, or this is a section that you have to see, that fault domains and what is update domains out here, and what is the algorithm on how Microsoft will go ahead and, let's say, change this out. And if you just scroll down here, right, it will also tell you how can you use a PowerShell script in order to, let's say, go ahead and create an availability set, new hyphen easy availability set, and it's also telling you how can you go ahead and do this out here as such. So my expectation is, guys, just go through the overview on how an availability set really, goes, and how can you create the availability set out here, and then and then use a PowerShell script in order to, let's say, see how to create an availability set out here as such. Yes, any questions till here, guys?
Yeah, Kiran.
Good, please.
So this one application will be deployed on all the 4 servers, right?
This one application will be deployed on all the 4 servers? No. This is an infrastructure as a service. One application is not going to be deployed on all the 4 servers. It is you as a user's responsibility to create multiple virtual machines and deploy it across your availability sets out here. That's what it tells you. So if you look at this one, and this is what it's telling you, we recommend that 2 or more VMs are created within the availability set to provide high availability to your application to meet this particular SLA.
That
Two
is a
or more
VM.
virtual machine.
Yeah.
Yes, that's yes,
But
two or more virtual. Mhm.
correct. If it is an application, right? Application server or a web server, right? So
Again,
creating an availability set. So in the
okay,
case, the purpose of
mhm,
creating is to have the high availability, right? So like
correct,
fault domains or update domains. So in that
correct,
case, if it is an application server, so we are going to deploy application on all the 4 VMs to bring that
exactly,
high availability, right?
exactly. So now it's an application server for me. So I will deploy a HTML code here. So I'll go ahead and configure my IIS. I'll do this. I'll deploy my first application. I mean, the same application here. At the same time, I'll also go ahead and create one more virtual machine, a replica of the first virtual machine out here, same virtual machine again,
Right.
and go ahead and deploy the same code on the second machine.
Like 4 machines like that, similarly, right?
4 machines, yes, you can say it's a 4 machine combination. In my case, I'll just go ahead and do two. You can also go ahead and create 2 more machines and deploy it as a part of this particular availability set out here.
Yeah, when we go 2 by 2, right? Then we need to deploy that HTML file on all the 4 servers. Those are all
All the four,
identical servers, right?
all
As per the
identical
configuration.
services. Yes.
Right. So now,
Hmm.
okay, so we haven't talked about the load balancer. So in order to access the HTML page, so how would
Hmm.
so we need a load balancer, right? Otherwise, how do
Yes.
we access
We
it?
would need a load balancer in this combination. So this is just the configuration, but accessibility needs to be coming through from a load balancer out here,
So
which we will
otherwise,
talk about on
yeah, otherwise we
what is
cannot
it.
access it, right? I mean, which server
Yes,
we
you
need to
cannot
access.
really correct. You cannot really access it out here as such.
And if it is an application server, right, then the licenses will also get into accountable, right? So is
Licenses
four
also
times.
will get into this. Good, please.
Yeah, I mean availability versus the cost, the trade-off.
It's availability versus the cost. Yes, of course. It's availability versus the cost. That's true. Because see, you will have to pay for the machines that are running. So when I say I'm creating one machine, I'm paying around, let's say, about 7 rupees per an hour for that particular machine, and this is a very sorry, this is a very simple machine. It's a two, let's say, CPU and 8 GB RAM machine out here, a very small machine. If I create high powered machines out here, I'll have to pay for the machine. I'll have to pay for the server licensing of the machine. So if you have a license, you can buy a license and let's say go ahead and let's say put the license out here. So that's what it's telling you. You know, when you create a machine here, when I hit the create virtual machine, and when I go for that particular image called 2019, let's say data center, if you just scroll down, it's telling, do you have licenses of your own? Do you want to apply your license out here? If you check this out, it's telling yes, I will confirm that I have licenses and etc. So the software that Microsoft installs on your machine, it's not licensed. It's your
Right.
responsibility to
Yeah.
get it licensed out there as such.
So this is
But if you
OS
have
license.
license,
Yeah.
this is always, yeah, exactly. This is always
But if it is
licensing
an
out here as well.
application license also, that adds up, right? So it adds up to all the 4 servers.
Application licensing is user responsibility. Application licensing is something that you have to take care of as let's say your development team or something like that.
So
So
all these four
application,
servers need to be in the same subnet, right? I think we are taking
all the
one.
four servers in an availability set combination have to be in this four, have to be in the same virtual network, not in the same subnet. It doesn't have to be in the same subnet. It has to be in the same virtual network out here as such.
Okay. And the update domain, I mean, Microsoft will do it,
Mhm.
the update process in the maintenance window, or they inform prior to that.
They do you know roll out the information in the form of an email telling that okay fine, this is the plan outage, this is the plan maintenance out here, and then they go ahead and patch their backend, let's say running servers out here as such.
Generally, this configuration is set up for clusters or any use case is there?
This particular configuration that we are looking at on this particular screen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, by let's say it's a fall domain and update domains. These
Hmm.
are these are best use cases for cluster and clusters.
Kind of, you can say an application cluster, yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you.
No
Yeah,
problem.
Kiran.
Good, please.
Yeah, Kiran. I'm having one doubt. Regarding
Yes.
that diagram, it is given on diagram, no? Yes, no.
Just a second. Just a second. I'll just switch my speakers once again because I'm not able to hear your voice properly. Just a second. Go ahead, please. Now you can go ahead.
Yeah, please show me that diagram.
Okay.
Diagram, yes, diagram is there, no? Yeah, in that scenario, I'm having small query about that durability and availability. If
Hmm.
these all are taking care about Microsoft team or your DevOps admins.
Okay. When you say all are, what do you mean by this? When you say all, what all do you are you indicating out here?
Yeah, my I'm thinking that in background, all are in Microsoft team. They will take care of both availabilities, all those things. We are managing that virtual machines. When we are creating the virtual machines, we will
Hmm.
create it, and
Yes.
background process all are Microsoft will take care about the power data center environment availability, the load balancer,
Hmm. See,
those activity they will take it out. But yeah,
mhm. See, this is an infrastructure as a service. Again, what we are looking at right now is an infrastructure as a service. Microsoft is just going to take care of the maintenance of your backend servers, whatever is there in your data center. This is our headache. To take care of this one is our responsibility right now. Microsoft is not going to take care of this. Microsoft is going to tell, okay, fine, this is our user responsibility to make sure that your application is available, to make sure your application is properly load balanced, to make sure that the licensing is acquired, and so on and so forth. This is your own responsibility. This is not me as Microsoft who's taking care of it. This is your own responsibility to make sure that you're creating a proper availability set and you're deploying your machines in a proper availability set out here. Such. Does that answer your question?
great. Yes.
So if we go back into our deployment,
Sir,
Just a second. I'll just come back. Just a second. Let me finish one small thing out here and I'll come back and take questions. Just hold on for 1 minute. So if we go back here into our deployment, so what did we do is that we created the virtual machine, the network and all these things. So if I click on deployment details, these are all the resources what Microsoft created me in the order of creation. So if you look at this one, the very first thing that got created is what? It's an availability set out here that got created. Setting it's an availability set. Then I have a network security group rule. Then I have the public IP address, the virtual network, network interface, virtual machine. This is called the shutdown schedule. Like when you create a virtual machine, it will ask you, do you want an auto shutdown and all these things. So it just went ahead and created a shutdown for the maintenance window. So it went ahead and created all these things. And if I now go into my resource group, I'll just go inside my resource group called demo RG right now. And if I just group this by type, the very first resource that I see is an availability set. If I go here, it's telling two fault domains, two update domains, one virtual machine running as a part of this particular, let's say, combination of, let's say, or this particular availability set. And if I scroll down, do you see I have demo VM00 running where? Fault domain 0, update domain 0. So if I come here into the diagram, this is what I have. So if I again logically divide this out, this is update domain 0, update domain 1, fault domain 0, fault domain 1. And when you created a machine, this machine is now created in update 0, which is this, fault 0, which is this. We call this as F0U0, fault domain 0, update domain 0, and your virtual machine is provisioned here on top of this particular server. This is where your VM is now created. Your VM now is created. Now, in order to make sure for high availability, I will create one more virtual machine. I'll say VM. I'll just go and use the same resource group called demo RG. I'll say this is demo VM01. Earlier one was 00. I'm saying this is 01. I'll just scroll down. Same region. Now I'll say availability set once again. And now I won't create an I won't create a new availability set. I will rather use the existing availability set and I'll say AV set sample 1 and take the same combination out here like 2019 data center, same let's say size. I'll give the let's say credentials out here as such. Let me put here, scroll down. I'll use my ports. I don't have a license, so I'm not let's say choosing the license out here as such, the OS licensing. I'll use the same network, which is the demo VNet that was created earlier. I'll review and create everything out here as such. Now I am creating the second virtual machine, which is demo VM01 as a part of the same availability set right now. Now Microsoft will tell, okay, fine, you know what, you want this particular machine to be created. So it's telling, okay, fine, there's a new machine that I'm creating right now. And now it's telling, okay, fine, let me now choose the availability set combination. Let's see if I put my machine here. Microsoft is now running a backend algorithm telling that, okay, fine, if I allocate the machine here, if fault 0 is down, both the machines are down. So I won't put it here. So this is ruled out. So Microsoft says, okay, fine, let me not put it there. Can I put it here? If update 0 is down, both the machines are still not available. Microsoft says, okay, fine, even this is not a good combination. Let me now check out this particular slot. Microsoft will say, okay, fine. If this is down, this is down, this is still up. So this is an ideal position. And let me place it here again. I do not have a control on where Microsoft is placing my service. All I can say is that, okay, fine, this is the availability set is what I can tell Microsoft. The backend algorithm of Microsoft will go ahead and provision your servers accordingly. So if you now see, it's now creating a demo VM1. And if you now go into your availability set, now it's creating a demo VM1 inside the availability set. It's not yet allocated the combination. It's not yet told where it is creating all your servers under. So let's say refresh this out. Let's wait for a couple of minutes in order for the server to be provisioned. And once the server once the server is provisioned, once the server is provisioned, it will also tell you where exactly it is provisioned out here. So let's refresh this out. Still says creating. So I'll just refresh my entire screen. Now do you see where it is provisioned? Fault domain 1, update domain 1, which means in my combination, this is the fault domain 1. Sorry, this is the fault domain 0. This is fault domain 1. This is update domain 0. This is update domain 1. In my combination, update domain 1, fault domain 1, which is this server. This is the physical server where your virtual machine is now provisioned out here as such. This is where your machine is placed. So now it's telling, okay, fine, you know what, even in the case of update or in the case of fault, you will at least have one server that is running, at least have one particular server that is running out here. Larger your availability set combination, greater is the probability that your machines are available, or greater is the probability that your, let's say, application is available out here as such. Yes, I can now take questions. I think someone had a question. Can we see the backend server name visible to us? No, that is not in our control. The backend servers are controlled by Microsoft. This is something we cannot really see, or the names is something that we cannot really see out here as such.
Kiran, I have a question. So here
Good, please.
0, 1, 2, 3, are these
Mhm.
servers or the racks? The data center?
These are sorry, these are server racks. These are
Yeah, server
racks in
racks.
a particular server. Yes,
Correct,
these are
right?
racks in a server.
So each rack
Mhm.
can have multiple physical servers also, right?
Yes, correct.
So in that case, assuming 0 has 2 servers and 1 has 3 servers, 2 has
Hmm.
4 and 3 has 5.
Right.
So when we create virtual machines, they
Hmm.
can go, they will, I mean, Microsoft will place in the same logic, the same algorithm, like it will check for U0, F0 and U1, F1
Yes.
first, and then look for
Yes.
other. Okay. So
Yes. Mhm.
in other combination, do we have an option to create more than one virtual machine at the same time? Like selecting the count from 1 to 2 or 5 or whatever, right? Do we have an option like
Okay.
that?
On the portal, you mean?
Yeah, the portal or let's say PowerShell, whatever.
Portal, you do not
Count.
have the option. Portal, you do not have it.
Okay.
But using automation like PowerShell or ARM templates or Terraforms,
Yeah, yeah. You can
you
give the
could
count, right? Yeah.
create, yes, you could
So in
create
that
all these resources at a go. Yes, good.
yeah, in that case, if I have let's say 5 virtual machines I'm deploying,
Right. Hmm.
right? Right. And in the so that case, I mean, how does the logic works? The algorithm works. I mean, it goes in the same fashion, like 0, 0 and 1, 1 first, and then
Yes.
look for others.
Yes.
How the
So
distribution happens.
yes. So let me put it in that way. So this is your demo VM00. This is your first server that you're creating.
Yeah.
This is demo VM01. She's okay, fine. You know what? This is DM01. I'll take it and put it inside these, or take it and put it inside, let's say, the use one F1. This is the combination where it plays in.
Hmm.
Now, server 2, which is demo VM02, has a 50-50 probability of either putting here or here. Because any which ways, this is now a combination. It's now a 50% probability that it will come here or it will place here, depending upon the rack availability. Seeing which rack is healthy, or let's say when Microsoft is trying to place, this rack is undergoing a maintenance, so it will place it here. So let's say
Okay.
it placed here. Telling this is demo VM02.
Right. So
Sorry, demo VM02. And here it's going to go ahead and let's say finally, because if you're now creating a fourth server, it's going to place it here anyway, because this is the only available slot right now in your combination. Again, this is a logical combination. That's what I'm trying to tell. So it's a demo VM03. Demo VM03.
This concept is something similar to VMware DRS, actually, distributed resource
Yes,
scheduling. Is
something
that the
similar
same?
out here. Kind
Okay.
of, yes. Now, the fifth server, because now you're telling that you're creating 5 parallel servers out here, or 5 parallel virtual machines out here. The
Some odd
fifth
number.
server,
Yeah. Mhm.
yes, some odd number out here. So the fifth server right now, Microsoft is telling, okay, fine, you know what? All the 4 racks are now occupied. Now, again, as you said, each and every rack can have multiple physical servers out there. Microsoft will say, okay, fine, you know what? Let me put your fifth server in the same rack as your first server is. Let me
It
put it
can
in that.
randomly, right? I mean, it can randomly
It
put
can
anywhere
randomly. Yes, it's a random
based on
allocation.
the availability, resources, and all that, health and everything.
Exactly. A combination of all these things, the algorithm will see which is the server that is available and it will place it out here as such.
So
Now,
does it
the
work on the hypervisor? I think Hyper-V only, right? I think, yeah.
yes, it's nothing but a hypervisor only.
No, Hyper-V technology only, right? I mean, that it has the DRS
Yes,
functionality. And one
yes.
last question, Kiran.
Hmm.
Do we
Good question.
have affinity as well here? I mean, let's say this particular DM demo
Okay.
V04 should go on to
Okay.
my F1 E1 F1.
Okay.
Can we set like that? I mean, affinity to virtual machine to the server rack.
No, we cannot do that. That's something that we do not have a control on because the allocation or the mapping of the servers to the backend, let's say, or mapping of your virtual machines to the backend server is completely taken care by the platform. So this is something that you do not have a control on.
Ah, right,
See, if
right.
we are from an
Mhm.
on-premise infrastructure, yes,
Okay. Now Hyper-V brings that. I mean, virtualization brings that capabilities, right? So
correct.
that capability
But
is not given to the user, right?
correct. But are we doing that virtualization? Meaning, are we maintaining that particular virtualization? No.
No.
This is something that I do not have a control on because, see, one thing that we have to just consider about here is that in the entire data center, we are not the only clients using this particular service.
Yeah, yeah,
So
correct.
there are a lot of clients which are, these servers are shared servers out here. These
Shared
are
model.
shared
Yeah.
racks.
Mhm.
It's a shared model of, let's say, operation. So what Microsoft does is that at that particular point in time, how many requests are really coming here? Am I really taking so many requests out here? And then according to the algorithm, I'll say, okay, fine, you know what, this customer, I'll place him, let's say, in server one, or the other customer is coming right now. Let me not place him in server one. Let me take to server three, so on and so forth. That is the reason we do not have a control of the underlying, let's say, Hyper-V. That's the reason Microsoft will not expose the underlying Hyper-V out here as such out there.
Got it. Got it.
Kiran,
Good, please.
default domain and update domain is there, right? For how many
Yes.
VMs, how many update domains we need to set?
For
Is
how
it
many we? Yes, good, please.
it will be taken care by architect or else the DevOps engineer will be set?
See, the number what we get uh, is given by the architect, telling that they go through a lot of things like firstly, what is the cost associated if I go for, let's say, a 3x2 combination, or if I go for a 3x60 combination or 3x20 combination, what is the cost that is associated, and what is the durability required by my application. See, because if you are a very huge application, like let's say something like Facebook, even an
Hmm.
availability set doesn't really work out here. Reason being, see, availability set is like an LRS, local redundancy. So it's only in a data center. What if this entire data center goes down? So no matter how many ever possibility that you think, if your entire data center goes down, there is no use of your entire availability set combination. So we think, as an architecture, we think about a lot of things like the cost, the budget that is allocated to the project. How much cost am I going to, let's say, get if I'm running, let's say, about 3 or 4 servers parallelly? And if I run 3 or 4 servers parallelly, will it be sufficient to accommodate the incoming load, or should I do something else, or should I go for something like an availability zone, which we'll be looking at what a zone really is, and so on and so forth. So yes, this number is given to us by the architecture. We apply this out, meaning we go ahead, we implement this out, and when implementation also when comes into picture, right, we'll be looking at automation, like what, let me do it with a PowerShell script, or let me do it with an ARM template, so that just in case my machine gets deleted, I can quickly take the ARM template, redeploy it, quickly stand up my machines out here as such. So this is something that we take care of at our end out here as such.
Okay. Can you please explain one scenario, real-time scenario for take any application and
Mhm.
tell us like how many VMs we can create and how can we how many update domains we can take.
Sure. I mean, it's not how many update domains out here. You can go for a maximum of 20 update domains and three fault domains out here.
But the
Mhm.
cost here, the cost varies, right? How the architecture will think
How
and
the architecture will look at that again. See, if I want to go into that particular section of architecture of Azure, then I'll have to cover much more things like, what, let's say data availability, cost calculator, and then I mean, even in the backend, I'll have to go ahead and understand what is the combination of so on and so forth. So again, if I need to slide down into the architecture, that will become a little, let's say, out of the scope topic. So that's the reason I'm not going and venturing into, let's say, the cost, let's say, saving and so on and so forth out here. That's the reason I'm not doing that. But yes, I can give a demo of a sample application. We can simply take a sample HTML page. We can see how basically we, as a DevOps engineer, goes ahead, creates
Mhm.
this out, and maintains this out.
Okay, just we will create it. Everything will be given by architect. We follow that.
Yes, yes.
And in interview, they doesn't ask how you will this availability set you people will follow the in organization. That all thing.
I'm sorry. Can you come again with your question, please? I did not get your question.
In interview, if they ask any how your organization follows this availability set, how many
Mhm.
servers you people are using for the particular application, just they have given like any IRTC app.
Mhm. So it again, I mean, you can give an example that what, this is what an organization uses. Like my organization uses something like about two fault domains and five update domains, and this is what we have designed for our application and so on and so forth. They're not really going to ask you in an interview what is your application, because that's something which is let's say client
Yes.
sensitive. On what is your application is something that they're not going to ask, but they're going to ask, depending upon, let's say, something like they're telling, okay, fine, what, I need somewhere around five fault domains. Is it possible? Not possible. It can only be maximum about three fault domains, and 20 update domains is what you can really tell out here as such.
Okay. If they have given any application scenario,
Mhm.
they have taken
Okay.
any Facebook,
Okay.
means a lot of users will be there. Means how many
Right.
update domains we can take.
See, maximum you can do 20. Even if it is Facebook, maximum update domains you can do 20 out here. So you can say it is 20 update domains out there on which the applications are really placed. And also, it's not really the update domains that matters in let's say an application like Facebook, because I'll have to consider things like auto scaling capability. Like, can my, let's say, virtual machine increase the number of cores if the incoming load is more? And then I'll have to put one more resource called a load balancer. So a couple of things in a combination work together in order to, let's say, help an application really survive.
Okay. Means when the
Mhm.
users are high, that time load balancer will be taken care.
Uh, I mean, we'll talk about load balancing, on what really load balancer means, and what is, let's say, the use case of a load balancer, and where it will really come again and help you with high availability out here. That's something that we'll talk about. In that, I'll just give an example on how it really takes the requests and what does it really do out here as such.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello. Sir.
Good, please, Anand.
In one particular server,
Mhm.
many VMs are working, sir.
Yes. Yes, Anand. In one particular
Like,
server, you can have multiple virtual machines that are running parallelly on the same underlying hardware. Is any more questions, guys? So what we are going to look at is that, see, I have two machines. Firstly, we will see how to create IIS on these two machines. One machine will create manually, the other machine will use a PowerShell script in order to create the IIS out here. And once we have the IIS in place, we'll then go ahead and understand what is load balancer. where will it come into picture and how will it, let's say, help us in order to, let's say, balance our applications out here as such. That's what you're getting into. And please read this particular documentation on what are availability set, and if time permits, please understand what do you mean by something called as an availability zone. So let's come back all the way to our initial documentation. Here there's something called availability zone out here. This is like a ZRS. Availability set was an LRS. This is something like a ZRS out here, where you can distribute your virtual machines across zones in a region, across 3 different zones in your region out here. And we'll talk about, let's say, what is the load balancing capability and all these things out here. Yes, any more questions before I close,
Kiran,
guys?
Kiran, can you go into that picture?
This one?
No, you created, yeah, here. So the first virtual machine. Virtual machine is something just like a laptop, which a user or also employee can connect to their servers,
Mm-hmm.
where the data
Correct.
resides, application resides, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Correct.
So when we are, suppose one more employee joined in the organization and he created a virtual machine to do his
Okay.
work, to access the application.
Okay.
So Microsoft itself, it will automatically configure that, that virtual machine will be uh, uh, are associated or connected to the which server. It will automatically, Azure will take care of that, or how it will, like, first time when we create, it went to the demo VM 00. Next, when we
Right.
create the machine, it went to the demo 01, means third one.
Yes.
Oh, no, I
So
think your understanding of virtual machine is wrong. Virtual machine
yes.
is not your laptop. It is a server. It is a
Yes.
virtual
So
server.
yes, it's a. I mean, to put it in a very layman term, yes, it's kind of your laptop, but it's running on the cloud. So you do not have a lot of control on
Correct.
what you can do on at a physical level. Yes,
Hmm.
it's a virtual device which you can connect to. But what I'm now telling is that, see, I'm not really concerned if my employee is connecting to a virtual machine. What I'm now
Hmm.
telling is that if this virtual machine is an application server, which means for an external user, this is now a UI based application, meaning you're hitting this particular, let's say, IP address, and this IP address is giving you some kind of interface, meaning like a website wherein you can interact and so on and so forth. And that's where I'm really talking about the use case scenario of, let's say, the availability sets and so on and so forth. If it were for my internal employees, right, I wouldn't have really looked at this particular concept in this way. I could just create the virtual machine without the availability set or a zone. Even if things go wrong, if it's, let's say, a non-critical workload, I'm still okay with that. I'm still okay to create a new one out here as such. But to answer to your question, if this is a virtual machine that you are creating as an administrator and you are deploying the virtual machine in an availability set called AV set sample, the allocation between the virtual machine and the underlying server, this is going to be taken care by the platform. When I say platform, it is Microsoft. It's going to understand what are the servers that are really free at that point, and then go ahead and, let's say, allocate those servers out here as such.
If you remember when we create the virtual machine, right? So we selected the server operating system. So it is a server basically, but it is a virtual
Yes,
server running on a physical server.
it's a virtual server rather than, let's say, a laptop. It's a virtual
It's not
server
a
out here as
laptop. Yeah.
such.
So laptop is the client that you are making connection to.
Correct.
Hello, sir.
So, Trinath, I'm a
Hello.
little out of time right now. So I'm already at 9:03. So I'll just hold your question. I'll take it in the morning tomorrow, and we'll go from there. Or if it's something that is really important to address, please go ahead, shoot out an email, and I'll respond back to your email out here as such. Okay, for now, I'll need to stop here because I have another class which is waiting. So I need to, let's say, take that. So we'll stop here and we'll come back and address more questions out here as such. Okay, thank you and have a good day ahead.